It's 12 away from 7 if you're keeping an eye on the time. Good to have you with us. I'm Gareth Edwards. Tumza is away for the next few days. Well, medical training is going mobile. Several leading universities partnering with a medical diagnostic company to develop the MySkills Medic app. It's aimed to provide guidelines on procedural skills commonly performed by doctors and other healthcare workers. Let's bring in, it's Ian Wakefield, Becton, Dickinson country manager, BD country manager joining us this morning, BD Africa country manager, Ian joining us this morning. Good to have you with us on the show. And many people are wondering, I thought we would have had something like this before. You've obviously seen a gap and you've gone for it.
I think, yes, first again, thank you for being on the show this morning, Gareth. I think there are apps available. The very difference about this particular app, it's locally developed. And the concept came from the medical universities in South Africa. So the University of Cape Town, Stellenbosch, Wits University, and the Free State University. They have clinical skills training labs, which they train their medical students through. And they've decided to take that training and put it on an app. We've sponsored it, but the material developed by the universities aimed at students. So if you're an intern, before you'd have a training session in a clinical skills lab, and then you go and practice at the patient. What this allows is to have the training virtual and with you 24/7. But most importantly, when the prof is not there with you, and you're now alone within a rural area, you have access to that information ongoing. As it is an app as well, obviously it's very much easy to update the information with latest clinical guidelines. So when the guidelines change, we can update the procedure on the app and make it immediately accessible.
Automatically, or would someone need to go and look for it to update it, or does it update automatically?
So as I said, this is an ongoing collaboration which we have with the MySkills Consortium. So they own the material and they do the updating. We obviously sponsor the availability of the app for both medical students and healthcare professionals. But I think for me, the easy thing, it's really easy accessible. And it's the kind of information which is really practical, which really makes it different from other apps. And it's...
The idea of this to use this standing next to the bed, isn't it? I mean, you can show us on there. I know you're going to unlock it as well. We've got a camera up here in the studio to show us what it actually looks like. So just take us through what we would see on the home screen. Maybe just leave it lying flat if it's comfortable enough.
So key thing is, as I said, this is part of the development of the app. There were the medical students at these universities which were actually testing the material and making sure it's relevant for what they do. There are more than 100 procedural skills that are on the app itself. And what I want to share is particularly on Saturday was World Safety Day, and the focus on medication errors. And one of the areas which I think as a patient we may be not that aware of, from a medication delivery point of view, it's one of the leading causes of, I would say, unavoidable harm in the healthcare space. And it's often due to both the storage of drug, prescription, administration, and gaps in medication, I would say, surveillance systems. Most critically, if you look at during a period of COVID, one of the contributing factors to medication errors are things like, firstly, weak systems, but most importantly, healthcare worker fatigue, etc. And this is obviously exacerbated during COVID, and that's why the World Health Organization made that a safety area. For example, so one of the areas within the app, if you're looking at, and I think these are basic clinical practices. So this is just drawing up medication. So if you, for the first time, being trained on this area, you can go to the app, look at what it means if you're preparing drug from a vial. Secondly, if you're doing it from an ampoule. But probably what is most critical is, if you've been in practice for a long period, those little, I would say, clinical learnings that you have to advise a new person doing a procedure about it. But that covers through more than 100 procedural areas. Another area which is...
It always just makes sure that you don't miss anything as well, whether it's you as an experienced clinician or a clinician that's maybe training somebody for the first time. It's almost like a checklist. It's almost like a pilot has before they take off. They have their checklist to make sure they haven't actually missed anything, because that could result in someone not getting the right kind of care or right kind of medication.
I think the fact you brought in the name pilots. So I think Rachel Weiss, who's one of the originators of she almost speaks to, like the pilots and planes, they have this culture of safety. And this really starts to embed that. The more you know, the more clear the practice is to you, the better you can serve the patient in the safest possible manner. And so that's where this makes it really easy from a clinician point of view, either when you're in training or you've left that space. If you want to refresh any areas of clinical practice, And I think that's the benefit of being in the classroom or having a tool which is digital. Anytime when you need to refresh your memory, you can go into the app, make it available to yourself, review the material, and then speak to the patient.
And who would have access to this? So obviously doctors, nurses, clinicians. What about, for example, patients? How do they check that the information on the app is correct? Are they able to get access?
So the app is freely available. It's both available from a Google as well as an App Store point of view. I have it available on my iPad here. So the app is freely available. As I said, the content is driven by clinical physicians and that do training. They do the updates frequently. And so really from whether it is in infection prevention and control, you want to look at safety, all that information is there for you. And as a patient, if you're going for a specific procedure, you can look at what that means and actually read some level of background.
Or prepare yourself for the procedure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what is quite different from this app as well, and I think during the period of COVID, for many of us, we've been exposed from a healthcare point of view more than we would have liked to be, and by the others through our close loved ones. What this actually speaks to in parts of the app is really, what it speaks to in any areas of the app, it actually has an area around patient information and consent. So one of the things you often find when a doctor's really busy, but they've got to speak to a patient and say, this is the procedure, this is what the risks are. And that actually gives you the doctor, especially if it's when you're in a hurry, actually what do you share to the patient in the most simplistic way to give an understanding procedure. And that really keeps the patient as part of the care journey and give them insight to what's going to be happening to them.
I did ask about patients just a moment ago, but maybe let's just flesh that out just in conclusion as well. Because to my mind, I would imagine you would need to have at least some sort of practice number that you need to log in with as well. Do you verify who gets onto this and who has the information? I know you said it's freely available, but if I go log in my email and a password, do I need a practice number to get in?
No, there is no practice number for this. So from a medical, so it's widely available. So I think because you have, students don't have a practice number, you have paramedics which are maybe in ambulances, because the breadth of the procedural areas are really from a basic point of view, which most clinicians deliver on a daily basis. And I think what it does reinforce is some of the procedures which we as a patient experience on a day-to-day basis, because I think there can be a level of complacency if you're doing something really often. And what this really does is really takes the clinician to take a step back. If I haven't done a procedure well, how do I refresh my memory? But most importantly, the material contained in the app is really put together by the clinical training schools at UCT, WITS, etc. So it's the latest material based on clinical guidelines, and it's really there to support healthcare practitioners in delivering best care to the patient which is in front of them.
Which is great, because as you say, it's the kind of procedures that get done every single day. You're not going to learn how to do open heart surgery through it. We don't want people accessing that kind of information. Ian, thank you so much for coming, and all the best with the app as well. It's obviously working on app, and it's also available on Google Play Store as well, you told me as well. And it's normally Apple, iOS, where it takes longer to get up and running, but it's there already. Congratulations to you and the entire team for putting this together. And I'd love to get some thoughts from medical students, medical practitioners, clinicians as to how useful this would be for you. As I say, thank you to Ian Wakefield, the BD Africa Country Manager. The app you're looking for, you can go and look for it, iOS and also Google Play Store. MySkills Medic app. My, how the world is changing.